By now, the hull is taking on more shape, its interior smoothed by bone scrapers, its edges lined with even cuts. You watch as one builder runs his hand along the surface, nodding slightly. "Good," he murmurs, a single word carrying both approval and relief. You realize that's probably the canoe equivalent of a chef's kiss. The day continues to stretch lazily, and you let yourself melt into the sandstone tools, shark teeth, and all feeling oddly connected to the quiet genius of these people who built entire futures out of wood, rope, and patience. The midday light begins to pour down like warm honey, glinting on the smooth curves of the partially shaped hull. The builders step back, squinting at their work with the kind of serious nods you've seen carpenters give when they're pretending not to be proud. One of the elders, a man whose face looks like it's been carved by the same tools they use on the wood, traces a line along the hull with a finger. His hand is steady, every movement deliberate, as though each gesture carries the weight of generations. He doesn't speak much, but when he does, the apprentices lean in like seagulls eyeing a loaf of bread. He points to a curve that seems almost invisible to you, murmuring something about how the canoe will cut through the waves if the angle is right. You can't see what he's seeing, but you nod along anyway. Historians still argue whether Polynesian canoe building followed rigid blueprints or whether every vessel was shaped by the intuition of its maker. Watching the elder now, its clear intuition wins every time. The younger builders gather around as he sketches something in the sand with a stick. It's a design, but not the kind you'd find in a textbook, just a few flowing lines and curves that suggest the canoe's soul more than its structure. One apprentice frowns, clearly puzzled, while another chuckles and gives him a playful shove. Apparently, if you can't read sand sketches, you're the butt of light-hearted teasing. The elder doesn't mind their laughter. He wipes the drawing away with a single sweep of his hand, like a magician who's revealed the secret and then erased it to keep you guessing. He walks slowly around the canoe, tapping certain spots on the wood with the end of his stick. Each tap sounds hollow, resonant, like testing the voice of an instrument. A quirky little ritual unfolds. Before cutting a new section, the elder sprinkles a bit of water on the wood, murmuring something under his breath. You lean closer, pretending you understand, but really, it's all mystery. Maybe he's asking the tree for permission, or maybe he's just cooling the surface. Either way, it feels oddly ceremonial, like you've stumbled into a sacred rehearsal for a performance you weren't invited to. The apprentices bring more tool-sharp tooth saws, coral scrapers, even a mallet carved from dense hardwood. One of them holds up a curious object, a measuring cord made of woven fibers, knotted at intervals. It looks simple, but when they stretch it across the hull, you can see the precision in its design. Historians debate whether these knotted cords were early forms of mathematical measurement or if they were more like memory aid stories woven into rope. Either way, you're impressed. The elder crouches beside the hull, pressing the cord against the wood, his lips moving silently as he measures. His face is a map of concentration, every wrinkle catching the sunlight like fine etchings. You can almost hear his thoughts calculating, adjusting, remembering how the waves behave and how the winds will push against the sail. It's not engineering in the modern sense. It's something deeper, a kind of conversation with the sea itself. As the work continues, you notice how even the mistakes become part of the process. When an apprentice misaligns a cut, the elder simply smiles and adjusts the line with a few deft strokes. No frustration, no panic, just a calm acceptance that wood, like life, rarely goes exactly as planned. The sun climbs higher and the air grows warmer. The smell of breadfruit wood mingles with the faint aroma of roasted fish wafting from the cooking fire nearby. Your stomach growls softly, though you try to pretend you're not already thinking about lunch. One of the builders catches your expression and grins, tossing you a half-joking, half-serious look that says, "Food comes after the hull behaves." The elder steps back once more, wiping his hands on a strip of cloth tied around his waist. "Good," he says simply, and the group relaxes a little. That one word carries the weight of approval, like a green light from history itself. Hey guys, tonight we're sliding into a slower world one where the sound of the ocean replaces your notifications and the most pressing task of the day is coaxing a canoe out of a log. You're standing on a sandy path, somewhere in a quiet Polynesian village, and the air is still cool with the last sigh of night. Palms sway lazily above you, making that soft rattling sound like someone crumpling thin paper in the distance. The horizon is only just beginning to glow, a streak of pink-like watercolor brushed across the sky. You can smell the sea, faint and salty, and the faint smoke of a fire that's been crackling since before dawn. You're not here for adventure, don't worry. You're safe from sudden pirate attacks or wild storms. In fact, you probably won't survive this historical boredom unless you're already halfway to dreamland. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. It's always a joy to see how many of us are winding down across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The villagers are already awake, their movements unhurried. You watch a boy carry a basket of breadfruit while his grandmother hums a tune that sounds like the rhythm of waves. The canoe builders gather by the shoreline, where a massive breadfruit tree trunk rests on the sand, stripped of its bark and smelling faintly sweet, like fresh-cut grass mixed with warm sap. There's no shouting, no hammering, just the occasional creak of wood being shifted and the low chatter of people who've been doing this their entire lives. Historians still argue whether canoe building was strictly a male occupation or if women had roles beyond weaving sails and mats. Here, though, it feels like everyone contributes. You spot an elderly woman rubbing her thumb across the grain of the wood, nodding approvingly as if the tree itself is giving permission to become a vessel. The builders' hands are calloused, their nails short and rimmed with dust. They work in silence at times, as if conversation might distract them from listening to what the wood wants. One man crouches down, placing his ear to the trunk as though checking for a heartbeat. Another chips gently at a knot with a tool made of sharpened coral. It's a slow, meditative rhythm chip. Chip pause like the ticking of an ancient clock. You can't help but notice the tools. They look simpleno shiny steel. No power drills, but they carry centuries of refinement. Shark teeth lashed to wooden handles act as saws, bone and shell are honed into chisels, and even a smooth stone is a hammer if you hold it with intention. The builders move with a fluid grace, passing these tools to each other without a word, as if they know exactly when the other needs them. Every so often, a gust of ocean breeze drifts in, carrying a whisper of salt and the faint scent of cooked taro from a nearby hut. You feel your shoulders relax, your breathing slowing to match the calm pace of this place. Someone jokes probably about the apprentice who nearly dropped a log last week, and laughter ripples through the group like a soft wave hitting shore. It's warm and easy laughter, not the kind you hear in office break rooms when someone mentions the boss. You smile, realizing that even centuries ago, workplace banter was a thing. As the sun peaks over the horizon, turning the lagoon into a sheet of molten gold, you're drawn closer to the builders. They're not just making a canoe, they're coaxing a story out of wood, weaving tradition into every cut and curve. You wonder what it feels like to spend days, weeks, even focused on one singular task, without distractions or the urge to check messages. Probably healthier for your blood pressure. But hey, here you are, listening instead. The morning is still stretching awake. A rooster crows in the distance, cliché, yes, but it fits the scene, and the village dogs flop lazily near the huts, uninterested in whatever deep, historic magic is happening here. The canoe rests silently, waiting for the next step, while the builders gather tools like ritual objects. You hear a young apprentice ask his mentor about a crack in the wood, and the older man just shakes his head, tracing the line with his finger. "The tree remembers the wind," he says, his voice so low you almost don't catch it. It's one of those poetic lines that sound profound enough to write on a mug. The pace is gentle, hypnotic. The smell of freshly shaved wood mingles with the ocean air, and you find yourself imagining how many canoes have been built on this very shore, each carrying dreams, food, and stories across the Pacific. Maybe, just maybe, if you stay still long enough, you'll feel the echoes of those journeys vibrating in the sand beneath your feet. You stay close to the shoreline as the morning deepens, watching the builders shift from stretching their backs to the real work of shaping the wood. The scent of freshly carved breadfruit wood grows stronger now, like a sweet, earthy perfume that blends with the salty air. You lean closer, drawn in by the soft rhythm of tools against grain. Every scrape and tap seems to echo across the lagoon as if the entire island is listening. One of the builders, a man with deep lines etched into his sun-browned face, kneels beside the canoe hull. His hands move as though they know the wood better than he knows himself. He peels thin curls from the trunk, with a sharpened piece of shell, each slice releasing another burst of woody fragrance. The shavings collect on the sand like curled ribbons, some so fine they almost float when the wind catches them. The younger apprentices mimic his movements, though they lack his smooth confidence. A few chips fly too wide, and one boy mutters under his breath when he digs too deep, earning a quiet chuckle from the older man. Historians still argue whether canoe builders were revered as specialists with near spiritual status, or simply practical craftsmen who filled a necessary role. Watching them now, you'd bet on the spiritual part. There's a reverence in every stroke, every breath held before the next cut. Nearby, someone begins heating a small bundle of leaves over the fire. You realize it's to soften the resin that will soon be used for sealing joints. The smoke curls upward in slow, lazy patterns, carrying that comforting smell of green wood and ash. You take in the scene, the steady ocean, the hum of quiet voices, and the sun climbing higher, painting everything in warm gold. It's like time has slowed just for you. One man stops to wipe his forehead with the back of his hand, smearing a thin line of sawdust across his temple like war paint. He glances at you with a knowing smile as if to say, "This is how it's done, slow, careful, patient." And you nod, though you're mostly just trying not to sneeze from the sawdust swirling around. You notice how each builder treats the trunk not as a mere log, but as a future vessel, almost alive. They knock gently on its surface, listening to the tone, deciding where to shave more and where to leave the wood thick for strength. There's no blueprint, no ruler, just instinct and muscle memory. It's a craft that's been perfected over countless generations, long before anyone thought of writing down instructions. A light breeze pushes through the coconut palms, rustling the leaves with a sound like distant applause. It mixes with the faint clink of shells being set aside and the crackle of resin heating over the fire. There's something about this combination, the hush of the wind, the soft scrape of tools, that feels like the audio version of a warm blanket. Suddenly, one of the apprentices brings over a thin plank carved from another section of breadfruit wood. The master builder inspects it, tapping the edge with his knuckle. "Too thin," he mutters, his voice as dry as the sand. The boy sighs, probably thinking about the extra hour of carving he just added to his day. But no one argues. Precision is everything when your boat might be the only thing between you and 1,000 miles of open water. A quirky detail catches your eye. A small carved figure tucked beside the tools, half buried in sawdust. It's a rough little tiki, maybe a good luck charm, or just the apprentice's attempt at art. It grins at you with uneven teeth, as if it knows more than it should. You can almost hear it say, "Relax, you're in good hands here." As the morning wears on, the scent of breadfruit wood becomes richer, warmer, blending with the faint sweetness of coconut fibers lying in bundles nearby. You feel the sun starting to warm your shoulders, and for a moment, you imagine dozing off right there in the sand, lulled by the rhythm of the work. The builders, meanwhile, don't slow down. If anything, their movements grow smoother as muscle memory takes over, turning this into a kind of meditative dance. One of the older men begins to hum, low and steady, and soon a few others join in. It's not exactly a song, more like a shared exhale, a reminder that they are all breathing in sync with the wood, with the sea, with each other. You feel your own breath match their inhale with the scrape, exhale with the tap. It's the kind of moment that makes you wonder if maybe you're the one being shaped, softened, and smoothed, just like the canoe. The log is slowly transforming before your eyes. What was once a bulky tree trunk now has the beginnings of a hull, its sides curving gracefully like a crescent moon. The builders stand back for a moment, admiring their work in the kind of quiet way that feels louder than applause. You find yourself holding your breath, as though this is some sacred milestone you're lucky enough to witness. The pace slows as the builders begin working with the smaller, sharper tools, the kind that don't forgive clumsy hands. A young apprentice kneels on the sand, gripping a shark-tooth saw with both hands. He moves it gently, back and forth, and you can hear the faint rasp of tooth against wood, a sound that's oddly soothing, like the scratching of a quill on paper. The tool itself is remarkable. Shark teeth lashed with coconut fiber to a curved piece of wood. It looks like something you'd see in a museum display case, yet here it's just a normal Tuesday essential. You shift your gaze to another craftsman squatting beside a pile of tools made from coral, bone, and stone. Each one is worn smooth from use, carrying the marks of 100 canoes before this one. He picks up a scraper fashioned from a piece of stingray spine, running it along the inside of the hull. The sound is delicate, like someone peeling an apple very, very slowly. It's hypnotic, and you can't help but lean closer, as if this scraping alone could peel back centuries of history. Historians still argue whether these tools evolved independently on different islands, or if they were shared knowledge passed through early voyages across the Pacific. Either way, the ingenuity is undeniable. There's no hardware store out here, no shiny steel chisels. Every tool is born from the land and sea, coral chipped into sharp edges, bone polished into smooth wedges, and obsidian shards glinting like black lightning under the sun. One of the older men notices your curiosity and holds up a bonadzea kind of early axe with a grin that says, "See this? She's older than your entire Wi-Fi network." He taps it lightly against the hull, producing a deep, satisfying thunk. The hull answers back, resonant and warm. You imagine that if this canoe could speak, it would tell you stories of waves and winds long before maps existed. The builders work as a team, each knowing exactly when to step forward or hold back. It's almost like a dance, though admittedly, one where the choreography involves a lot of squatting and careful scraping. The apprentice with the shark tooth saw pauses for a moment, rubbing his wrist, and one of the older men chuckles softly. "The first day is always the worst," he says, his voice low and raspy. "Tomorrow your arms will feel like lava rocks." Somewhere nearby, a woman weaves a mat from pandanus leaves, her fingers moving as swiftly as the waves lap the shore. The mat will become part of the canoe's sail, but for now, it's a quiet side projector rhythm of weave and pull syncing with the builder's scrape and tap. You get the feeling this entire village operates on invisible metronomes tuned to the ocean's heartbeat. A quirky tidbit unfolds before your eyes. One builder uses a seashell as a tiny scoop to collect wood shavings. He sprinkles them into the fire, watching them crackle and spark. He winks at you, as if this is a secret offering to the gods of craftsmanship. You wonder if every shaving is like a prayer-reach curl of wood, a whisper for safe journeys and calm seas. The midday sun begins to sneak overhead, and the smell of warm sap rises from the carved wood, mixing with the faint tang of salt water and the smoky breath of the fire. The builders don't rush. They never do. Canoe building isn't a race. It's a conversation with time itself, one that demands patience and a stubborn kind of love. You glance at the apprentices again, noting the way they grip their tools carefully but with a hint of pride. Maybe they're dreaming of the day they'll be the ones giving quiet instructions just like their mentors. The line between teacher and student feels so thin here, blurred by the endless repetition of work, laughter, and shared meals. And then there's that low hum, again a half-sung chant that rises like mist from the builders. It's not for show, it's simply how they keep focus, how they remember the rhythm of their ancestors. The words are old, likely older than the trees they carve. You don't understand them, but you feel them, pulsing in the air like a slow heartbeat. One man pauses, holding up a chunk of coral tool against the sun, examining its edge. He sharpens it with a stone, small flakes falling away like powdered sugar. There's something profoundly calming about watching this, like sharpening a pencil, only with a hint of, if I mess up, I ruin a week of work. No pressure. You shift your weight in the sand, realizing that the tools are more than instruments, they're extensions of the builders themselves. The grooves worn into each handle tell stories of countless hands, each builder adding a layer of memory. It's like history is baked into every scratch and dent. A breeze sweeps across the lagoon, fluttering the palm fronds and sending a few loose shavings skittering over the sand. You pick one up absent-mindedly. It's feather-light, curling like a delicate ribbon, and you realize that this canoe is as much about removing wood as it is about shaping it. What's left behind is just as important as what's taken away, a strangely poetic metaphor for life, if you're in the mood for that sort of thing. You sit back in the sand, letting the soundscape wash over you, the scrape of coral, the murmur of voices, the sigh of wind in the trees. It feels timeless, as though you've stepped into a scene that's been replayed for centuries. You're not just watching them build a canoe, you're watching them weave a piece of their identity into something that will ride the waves long after today is over. The sun now rests directly above the lagoon, making the water shimmer like a field of crushed diamonds. The builders don't seem to notice the heat, or perhaps they've simply made peace with it after years of sweating under this relentless sun. You, however, can feel a bead of sweat running down the side of your face. and you briefly consider pretending it's a sign of solidarity with these masters of patience. The next stage begins with a rhythm that's almost musical. You watch as two apprentices kneel on either side of the hull, each holding a smooth piece of pumice stone. They begin to sand the interior, moving in long, deliberate strokes. The sound is faint but steady, sh, like someone whispering secrets to the wood. It's a soothing rhythm, and you feel your shoulders slacken with every pass of the stone. One builder hums a tune under his breath, low and slow. Another picks up the melody, and soon the sanding turns into an unspoken song. The harmony is almost trance-like, weaving through the air like a soft breeze. Historians still argue whether these chants were traditional work songs meant to keep time or if they were more spiritual in nature, perhaps to honor the spirit of the canoe. Whatever the reason, you can't deny that the melody makes the whole scene feel like something sacred. The pumice stones are fascinating in their own right. They're not just picked at random from the beach. Each stone is carefully chosen for its texture enough to smooth the surface, but not so harsh that it will scar the wood. You imagine that, just like your favorite kitchen sponge, that's somehow just right. These stones have earned their place through trial and error. One of the older builders leans over, inspecting the work. He runs his fingertips across the smoothed interior, nodding slightly. "Too rough," he says at one spot, motioning for the apprentice to switch to a finer piece of stone. The apprentice obeys, his brow furrowed with concentration. There's no rushing here. It's like watching someone polish a jewel, slow and steady, until the wood gleams under the sunlight. A quirky tidbit pops up when you notice one of the apprentices sprinkling sand on the pumice. He rubs it in, explaining, with a grin, that it keeps the wood awake. You're not sure if that's a metaphor, a joke, or a genuine technique, but it sounds mystical enough to go along with. Perhaps the canoe likes a little grit massage before taking on the open sea. The air is filled with the scent of warm wood, mixed with the faintly metallic tang of sweat. Every now and then, a builder pauses, wiping his face with the back of his arm, leaving a streak of fine dust that makes him look like a warrior who fought valiantly against, well, sandpaper. As the afternoon rolls in, the builders gather around the canoe, each taking turns sanding specific sections. They rotate positions with quiet efficiency, like a relay team where the baton is just a slightly less gritty stone. You can tell that everyone knows exactly what needs to be done, even if no one's actually saying it. It's teamwork built on instinct, repetition, and trust. There's something mesmerizing about watching the hull slowly transition from rough, pale wood to a smooth surface that reflects the light in soft, creamy tones. It's like watching a sculpture emerge from stone, or like when you finally untangle a messy set of earbuds' pure satisfaction. One of the apprentices, clearly tired, flops onto the sand for a moment, breathing heavily. The older builder teases him, saying, "Even the canoe has more stamina than you." You laugh quietly, because yes, the canoe does look like it could outlast all of them at this point. Somewhere in the distance, a conch shell sounds a signal for the midday meal, but no one immediately drops their tools. There's a kind of unwritten rule. You finish smoothing one section before walking away. It's as if the canoe would judge you for leaving it half-sanded. You notice a few shavings scattered on the ground, their edges curled like tiny sleeping cats. The builders treat even these discarded curls with care, sweeping them aside gently rather than stomping them into the sand. There's a sense that everything, every tool, every chip of wood is part of a bigger story. As the final strokes of the pumice stones fade, the builders step back, eyes scanning for imperfections. The elder nods approvingly, tapping his foot against the hull. "Good," he says again, his voice low and certain. That single word sends a ripple of quiet satisfaction through the group. The air is heavy now with warmth and wood dust, and your eyelids feel like they've gained an extra pound each. Maybe it's the rhythm of sanding, or maybe it's just the universe telling you that this is the perfect time to nap. Either way, the canoe is one step closer to becoming a living, breathing vessel, and you can almost hear it sigh with contentment. The afternoon heat settles in, thick and languid, like a heavy blanket laid over the village. You shift closer to the fire pit, drawn by the smoky scent of resin simmering in a small clay pot. A builder crouches nearby, stirring the sticky, amber liquid with a smooth stick. It bubbles lazily, releasing a fragrance both sweet and sharp, something like honey mixed with pine sap. The smell clings to the air, winding through the warm breeze and weaving itself into your senses. Not too hot, the builder mutters, giving the pot a careful shake. You can tell this step is delicate. Too little heat, and the resin won't melt properly. Too much, and it burns, becoming useless. Historians still argue whether early Polynesian canoe builders discovered resin waterproofing by accident, perhaps from tree sap dripping onto a fire, or if it was a planned innovation from the start. Judging by the care this builder takes, you suspect it's the product of centuries of meticulous trial and error. The apprentices hover around, watching closely as the resin thickens. One of them tries to dip a finger in, only to yelp when the older man smacks his hand lightly with the stirring stick. "Patience," he says, his tone half stern and half amused. You chuckle under your breath. Apparently, hot resin is not a toy good life advice, really. Beside the fire, a pile of coconut husks rests, waiting to be shredded into coarse fibers. These will serve as lashings, binding the canoe's pieces together once the resin is ready. You pick one up, feeling its rough texture scrape against your palm. It's surprisingly strong, and when soaked in water and twisted into rope, it becomes even tougher. It's like nature's duct tape, only biodegradable and far cooler. The builder tests the resin by letting a drop fall onto a flat stone. It cools quickly, hardening into a glossy bead. He nods with satisfaction, then motions for an apprentice to fetch a bundle of wood strips. These strips will form part of the canoe's outrigger balancing arm that will keep the vessel steady in rough seas. As the builders work, they smear a thin layer of resin onto each joint, pressing the pieces together with deliberate force. The smell of the warm resin is oddly comforting, a reminder that even the most rugged crafts require a touch of nature's glue. A quirky tidbit emerges when one of the men explains that some villagers used to mix fine sand into the resin to give it extra grip. Like seasoning, he says with a grin. You're not sure if he's serious, but you'll take his word for it. The scene around you is one of quiet focus. The resin pot hisses softly as it's shifted off the flames, while the apprentices coil coconut fibers into ropes, twisting and pulling until their hands are streaked with pale dust. Every step feels like an old dance-on move leading seamlessly to the next. A gentle breeze sweeps through the village, carrying the sharp tang of the sea and the sweet aroma of the simmering resin. You watch as one of the builders carefully lashes a wooden crossbeam to the hull, his movement slow but confident. He pulls the coconut fiber taut, knots it with a flick of his wrist, and seals the knot with a dab of hot resin. The joint gleams in the sunlight, like a tiny amber jewel holding everything together. Historians debate whether these lashings were purely functional or also symbolic, representing the bonds of the community, the connections between land and sea. It's easy to see why they might think that. Each knot seems to carry intention, a whispered promise that this canoe will endure storms, waves, and time itself. You catch yourself breathing more slowly, matching the rhythm of the builder's hands. The resin cools in layers, forming a glossy shell over the fibers, while the wood darkens slightly where the heat has kissed it. It's like watching a puzzle come together, without ever seeing the box image, just trusting that the pieces will fit because they always have. As the sun tilts westward, the builders pause to check their progress. The hull is sturdy now, its seams sealed and glistening under the sunlight. One apprentice runs his hand over a freshly joined section and whistles softly in admiration. "Smooth as dolphin skin," he says. You smile, because you've never touched a dolphin, but you imagine it feels exactly like this, warm, sleek, and ready for the ocean. One last dollop of resin sizzles as it hits the surface of the wood. The elder steps back, squinting against the sunlight, and nods. "It will hold," he says, voice carrying a kind of calm certainty you wish you could bottle. You sit back in the sand, letting the scent of resin and salt wrap around you. For a moment, everything feels suspended: the canoe, the builders, even time itself, like the world is holding its breath before the next step of the journey. By late afternoon, the builders are shifting gears from sealing to measuring, and you find yourself mesmerized by the tools they use for this stage. Gone are the modern rulers or tape measures you're used to. Instead, they reach for a collection of cowrie shells and knotted cords, each piece worn smooth by years of use. These humble tools have a precision that feels almost mystical, as if the ocean itself whispered the measurements to the builders. One man crouches beside the hull, laying out a cord with evenly spaced knots. He stretches it across the canoe, murmuring numbers under his breath, though they're not numbers in the way you know them. It's a rhythm, a pattern of length and pause, a language that doesn't need pen or paper. Historians still argue whether these chords were used strictly for measurement or if they also held symbolic meaning, like a chant written in fiber and knots. A younger apprentice picks up a cowrie shell, holding it against the wood to gauge the curve of the hull. The shell's smooth, glossy surface reflects the sun in a gentle arc. It's a quirky yet clever solution, using the natural symmetry of shells to mimic the curves they want to carve. You can almost hear the elder's voice in your head. If it works, why change it? Honestly, you can't argue with that. The builder's teamwork shines here. One person holds a cord steady, while another marks the wood with a piece of charcoal. The marks are faint and almost look like they'd wash away with a single tide, but the builders remember each line. It's as if the measurements exist as much in their heads as they do on the wood. Nearby, the elder sits cross-legged, weaving another cord with nimble fingers. His movements are slow but sure, each twist of the fiber adding strength. He glances up and says something about trusting the cord but trusting your hands more. You like that? It feels like the kind of advice that could apply to pretty much everything: building canoes, cooking dinner, or just surviving life. As the builders work, they test the curve of the hull repeatedly. One man tilts his head, examining the angle of the bow with the intensity of a painter deciding whether the sky should be just a shade lighter. The apprentices stand back, watching, probably wondering how many years it will take before they too can just look at wood and know exactly where it's wrong. A gentle wave laps at the shore, and the sound blends seamlessly with the low hum of voices. You notice how no one seems in a hurry. It's not just that they're taking their time, it's that the concept of time feels different here. Maybe it's the heat, or maybe it's the understanding that a good canoe isn't built by the clock but by the tides and the wood's own willingness. A quirky moment interrupts your thoughts. One apprentice picks up a shell and pretends to use it as an earpiece, holding it to his ear and pretending to receive instructions from the ocean. The others laugh, and even the elder cracks a smile, shaking his head. You chuckle too, because why not imagine the sea as the project manager of this whole operation? The cowrie shells clink softly as they're stacked together, like a set of delicate wind chimes. The knotted cords are coiled neatly after each measurement, each knot telling a story of distance, patience, and skill. You realize how much trust is placed in these simple tools. There's no double-checking with fancy equipment, no laser levels, just shells, cords, and the sharp eyes of people who know exactly what they're doing. By now, the hull is symmetrical, its lines clean and pleasing to the eye. The elder runs his hand along the side, nodding approvingly. The sea will like this one, he says, almost as if the ocean were a picky customer who only accepts the finest craftsmanship. You lean back, letting the breeze ruffle your hair, and watch the sunlight dance across the polished surface of the wood. It's smooth but not slick, curving gracefully like a wave frozen in time. You can't help but imagine what it will feel like to glide across the water in this vessel, sails catching the wind, the horizon opening like a slow-moving dream. As the builders wrap up this stage, they gather the shells and cords, tucking them away with care. It's not just about tools, it's about respect. Each shell, each fiber, has earned its place in this ritual of creation, and the builders treat them like old friends. The day drifts on, and you find yourself lulled by the gentle sounds, the swish of sand under feet, the rustle of coconut fronds overhead, and the quiet creak of wood as it shifts under their careful touch. You feel drowsy, but in a good way, like you're sinking into the rhythm of this place, carried along by the patience and precision of these canoe builders who trust shells and knots more than anything modern. The afternoon light softens as the sun begins its slow descent, casting long shadows over the beach where the builders gather for the next, almost spiritual task: carving the canoe's figurehead. You watch as one of the older craftsmen, a man with streaks of silver in his hair, brings forward a smaller piece of dense, dark wood. It's smooth but unshaped, like a blank canvas waiting to be transformed. He sits cross-legged before it, tools laid out like sacred instruments, a bone chisel, a shark-tooth knife, and a smooth stone for polishing. The others gather around, giving him space, because this part isn't just carpentry, it's tradition. The figurehead is said to carry the spirit of the canoe, guiding it across the ocean and protecting everyone who rides within. Historians still argue whether these carvings represented deities, ancestors, or simply symbolic guardians. But here, it doesn't feel like a debate. It feels like belief. The craftsman begins with light cuts, carving the first delicate lines into the wood. The sound is softer Noah, gentle scraping, more whisper than noise. You can see his hands moving with a steady rhythm, his fingers following curves he seems to know by heart. The figurehead's shape starts to emerge, a serene face, its features calm and watchful, eyes closed, as if dreaming of the ocean it will soon face. The apprentices sit nearby, hushed for once. You get the feeling they understand the gravity of this moment. It's not about speed or skill here, it's about intention. The elder pauses between cuts, running his thumb along the wood, sometimes closing his eyes like he's feeling something beyond the surface. A quirky touch of personality sneaks into the process. One of the younger builders whispers a suggestion, maybe give it a smile, and gets a playful flick on the forehead from his mentor. This one is serious, the elder says with a smirk. The sea respects a serious face. You can't help but grin at the idea of a stern, no-nonsense figurehead silently judging the waves. The face grows more defined as the hours pass. The nose is straight and strong, the lips slightly curved in a way that suggests both wisdom and mystery. When the craftsman leans back to examine his work, the sun catches the polished grain of the wood, and it almost glows. You wonder if the figurehead will look this way on the open water, half spirit, half sculpture. As he works, the elder hums a low melody, joined by the rhythmic beat of a drum played softly by another builder in the background. The sound blends with the hush of waves and the rustle of palm fronds. It's like the entire village has fallen into a trance, each note carrying centuries of memory. Historians debate whether these carvings were individualized for each canoe or followed a standard pattern. Watching this one come to life, you can tell there's nothing standard about it. Each stroke of the chisel is personal, as though the carver is talking to the wood itself, coaxing out a soul that was always waiting inside. The apprentices fetch smooth stones, and together they start to polish the carved face, rubbing it with a mixture of oil and fine sand. The wood shines under their hands, its dark surface gleaming like wet obsidian. The figurehead now feels alive, watching over the half-built canoe with a calm, eternal gaze. The elder places the carving at the bow, holding it steady while others lash it into place with coconut fiber. Each knot is tied with care, each wrap of rope like a silent blessing. When it's secure, the builders step back, heads tilted slightly in admiration. You can almost feel the canoe breathe for the first time, as if it has found its identity. There's a pause here, quiet moment where no one speaks, not even the birds in the nearby trees. It's as though the island itself is acknowledging this step. Then, someone claps the elder on the back, and the silence breaks into gentle chatter. The figurehead remains still, but its presence feels strong, like a quiet guardian already preparing for the journeys to come. You sit there, watching the sun dip lower, painting the sky with hues of orange and rose. The carved face glows in the warm light, its features soft yet commanding. It's a reminder that this isn't just a boat, it's a vessel of history, of hope, and of stories yet to be told. The day drifts into late afternoon, and the builders finally take a break under the shade of a grove of palm trees. You follow them, settling into the soft sand as they set down their tools with an air of quiet satisfaction. The smell of taro roasting over coals mingles with the salty breeze, and your stomach growls like it's been waiting all day for this moment. A woven mat is laid out, and bowls of food are passed around taro, sweet breadfruit, and freshly caught fish wrapped in leaves. The fish is grilled just enough to flake apart when touched with a finger, releasing a smoky aroma that makes your mouth water. Someone hands you a piece of warm taro, and you take a bite. It's earthy and comforting, like the kind of food that hugs you back. The apprentices sit in a circle, laughing quietly as they share bits of gossip from the village. One boy tells a story about a pig that escaped during a festival, running through the village like it owned the place. The elder builders laugh so hard they have to wipe their eyes, shaking their heads. You realize that humor, even in the past, sounds just as familiar and warm as it does now. As they eat, the builders speak about the storm that passed a few weeks ago. They discuss which parts of the village still need repair, and how the waves had nearly swallowed one of the smaller fishing canoes. Historians still argue whether Polynesian communities built their canoes for war, trade, or simply for daily survival. But listening to these men talk, It's clear that the canoe is as much a lifeline as it is a work of art. A quirky moment arises when one of the apprentices tries to juggle 3 coconuts to impress the group. He manages a few clumsy tosses before one coconut hits the sand with a dull thud. Everyone bursts out laughing, including the elder, who gives him a slow clap for effort. It's the kind of shared humor that lightens even the most serious of tasks. The conversation drifts to tales of past voyages. One builder, his voice low and steady, speaks of his grandfather who once sailed for days across open ocean, navigating by the stars and the flight patterns of birds. He talks about nights when the sky seemed so vast and close that the stars looked like tiny fires you could pluck from the darkness. You lean in, captivated by the way his words weave images of courage and quiet endurance. A warm breeze sweeps through the palm grove, carrying the scent of grilled fish and the ocean salt. Someone passes around a bowl of coconut water, the liquid cool and refreshing. You drink slowly, savoring the sweetness, and think about how simple pleasures good food, good company, and a project worth working on are timeless. The builders eat in companionable silence for a while, the only sounds being the crunch of taro and the soft creak of palm leaves overhead. It's a moment of peace, a kind of reset before they return to the demanding work of shaping the canoe. One of the older men leans back, gazing at the horizon with a satisfied sigh. "This is the best part," he says softly, "when the wood rests, and we do too." After the meal, they rinse their hands in the tide, the water lapping cool against their skin. You join them, letting the salt water wash over your fingers. It's strangely grounding, as if the ocean is welcoming you into its quiet rhythm. Before heading back, one apprentice picks up a small piece of charcoal and draws a rough outline of the canoe in the sand. The elder glances at it and nods approvingly. "Soon," he says, "she will touch the waves." The way he calls the canoe "she" makes you smile. It's not just wood anymore. It's a companion, a partner for journeys yet to come. The sun dips lower, casting golden streaks across the water. The builders return to their work, leaving footprints in the sand that are quickly washed away by the incoming tide. You follow, feeling both heavy with contentment and light with curiosity. Back by the half-finished canoe, the builders gather around the mast supports and sail frames. The conversation picks up where it left off, moving seamlessly into a mild argument about sails. You lean closer, curious. It's not the kind of argument with raised voices or slamming doors. This one is wrapped in quiet amusement and the occasional snort of disbelief. "Pandanus mats," one of the older builders insists, patting a rolled-up bundle of woven leaves beside him. Nothing catches the wind like pandanus. His apprentice rolls his eyes, clearly unconvinced. "But the fine woven leaves are lighter," the boy counters. "Lighter means faster. You can outrun a storm if you need to." Historians still argue whether early Polynesian sails were purely about efficiency or also about aesthetics and ritual. Watching these men, you realize it's probably a mix of both. The sails aren't just functional, they're symbols of skill, pride, and maybe even luck. To prove his point, the elder unrolls a pandanus mat and stretches it out between his hands. The weave is tight and strong, with faint patterns of light and shadow flickering across its surface. It smells faintly grassy, like a field in early summer. "This," he says with a grin, "will hold even when the wind is stubborn." The younger apprentice grabs a smaller sail woven from softer leaves. He holds it up and lets the breeze run through it, causing the fibers to ripple like water. "Lighter," he repeats with a teasing smile. The group laughs, and the elder shakes his head, pretending to grumble. A quirky detail catches your attention. One of the sails has been painted with simple geometric designs, triangles and arcs in deep earthy reds and blacks. The painter, a woman from the village, explains that these shapes aren't random. They represent waves, wind patterns, and the stars used for navigation. "The sail remembers the sky," she says softly, and you think that's the kind of line people would pay to have on a motivational poster. The builders begin attaching the sail supports, carefully fitting them into the hull. They work with a natural rhythm, passing ropes and wooden beams back and forth, the kind of wordless coordination that only comes from years of working side by side. You watch as they lash the supports together with coconut fiber, pulling each knot tight, then sealing it with a dab of resin for extra strength. A light breeze catches one of the sails lying nearby, and it flutters with a dry whisper. You imagine it's impatient to be on the water already. The sound is strangely soothing, like the gentle crackle of a paper kite. The elder pauses, leaning on the side of the canoe, He gestures toward the horizon, where the ocean meets the sky in a sharp line of blue. A good sail doesn't fight the wind, he says. It dances with it. The apprentices nod, though one of them sneaks a grin as if to say, easy for you to say when you're not the one weaving for hours. Nearby, another builder sharpens a wooden spar, running a shark-tooth blade along its length. The faint rasp of tooth against wood joins the music of the breeze and the distant calls of seabirds. It's a quiet symphony of island life, steady, deliberate, and unhurried. Historians debate whether certain sail shapes like the distinctive triangular crab-clawed design emerged from pure trial and error, or if they were inspired by natural forms, like bird wings or palm leaves. You watch as one of the builders adjusts the angle of a spar, holding it up to the light as if to compare it to the wings of a passing gull. Maybe the answer is both. The discussion of sail materials eventually settles into good-natured teasing, with the elder giving a half-smile that says, "We'll see whose sail works best when the wind tests it." They continue fitting and tying, the shape of the canoe now unmistakable a vessel that seems ready to leap into the water the moment it's freed from the sand. You sit back, feeling the warmth of the setting sun on your skin, and watch the sails billow slightly in the breeze. Even half-built, the canoe already looks eager, like a bird stretching its wings before flight. You can't help but think of the journeys it will take, the miles of ocean it will glide over, guided by these very sails that were once the subject of a playful argument. The late afternoon sun dips lower, and the builders shift to one of the most satisfying parts of the process, painting the canoe. The smell of crushed pigments mixes with the salty breeze, creating an oddly pleasant aroma of minerals and earth. You watch as one of the apprentices grinds chunks of coral and charcoal between two smooth stones, turning them into fine powders. The coral produces a soft white hue, while the charcoal leaves a rich, velvety black. Nearby, another builder is busy mixing plant dyes into coconut bowls. The colors range from a deep, rusty red to a muted yellow that reminds you of sun-bleached shells. They don't have a rainbow of options, but each color feels like it belongs to the island itself. Historians still argue whether these colors were chosen for symbolic reasons or purely for practicality: white to reflect heat, black for durability, red for tradition. Here, it just feels like an act of pride, a way of giving the canoe a personality. The elder dips a woven brush made from pandanus fibers into the red pigment. With slow, deliberate strokes, he begins painting the bow. The color spreads across the wood like a sunset melting into the horizon. "The canoe must carry the colors of home," he says softly. You wonder if every canoe was a floating memory of the island it came from, each hue a silent promise to return. A quirky moment occurs when an apprentice accidentally splashes a streak of black across the hull. He freezes, expecting the elder to scold him. Instead, the old man chuckles, tilts his head, and says, "Maybe the sea likes stripes." The others laugh, and the apprentice grins with relief. You have to admit, the uneven black streak does give the canoe a sort of rugged charm. The painters work with slow precision, filling the sides with patterns of lines, spirals, and triangles. Each shape seems to tell a story: waves rolling across the ocean, fish darting through coral reefs, stars guiding sailors under the night sky. One woman, her hands stained with pigment, explains that certain patterns are meant to speak to the spirits of the sea, ensuring safe passage. You nod thoughtfully, even if you suspect the sea's mostly impressed by good craftsmanship. The colors deepen as they dry under the warm sunlight. The red becomes richer, the black bolder, while the yellow highlights shine like threads of gold. The hull, once plain and pale, now looks alive, as if it has absorbed the essence of the island itself. Historians debate whether these designs were practical markers, perhaps to help identify canoes from afar, or if they served as ceremonial art. Watching the builders now, it's clear the process is both practical and profoundly personal. Each brushstroke is deliberate, each shape a quiet echo of generations before them. One of the apprentices picks up a piece of charcoal and begins sketching a small fish near the stern. It's not planned, but no one stops him. The elder simply raises an eyebrow and mutters, "Hope that fish swims fast." You laugh softly apparently. Even historical canoe decoration came with its share of inside jokes. The sun casts a warm glow on the freshly painted hull, making the pigments glimmer faintly. The builders step back to admire their work, the elder crossing his arms with a satisfied nod. "She looks ready," he says, as if the canoe has just been dressed for a grand ceremony. As you sit there, watching the colors settle into the grain of the wood, you feel a strange sense of connection. This isn't just about building a boat, it's about storytelling. Every curve, every painted line is a piece of history captured in wood and pigment. A breeze stirs, carrying the scent of salt and fresh paint, and you imagine the canoe cutting through the waves, its bright colors flashing under the sun, a moving piece of art on a canvas of blue. It's enough to make you sigh, your thoughts drifting like sails catching wind. With the hull painted and gleaming in the soft evening light, the builders turn their attention to a part of the canoe that's nearly invisible but crucial: the lashings. Bundles of dried coconut fiber are laid out on mats, waiting to be transformed into cords strong enough to hold the entire vessel together. You pick one up, running your fingers along the rough texture. It feels coarse, almost brittle, but you know it will be twisted and woven until it's strong as steel. The elder kneels and begins teasing the fibers apart, pulling them into thin strands. He works with practiced hands, twisting and rolling the strands against his thigh to form a tight cord. The motion is hypnotic, like watching someone spin thread on a wheel, except this thread could mean the difference between floating or sinking. Historians still argue whether Polynesians developed these fiber techniques independently or adapted them from early Southeast Asian seafarers. Either way, the method is astonishingly effective. The apprentices join in, their hands moving in rhythm with the elders. Soon, the cords begin to grow in length, coiled like small serpents beside the hull. One boy jokes that his cords are stronger than shark teeth, earning a good-natured laugh from the others. You grin, realizing that rope, making humor, is apparently a universal thing. When enough cords are ready, the builders begin the delicate work of binding the canoe's components together. You watch as they pass the cords through drilled holes in the hull, threading them around wooden crossbeams with an intricate pattern. Each lashing is tightened with a pull so firm you half expect the wood to creak in protest, but it holds steady, absorbing the tension like it's meant for this exact task. A quirky detail emerges when one apprentice dips his fingers in coconut oil and rubs it onto the cords before pulling them taut. Keeps the knots from biting, he explains with a grin. It's such a simple yet ingenious trick, and you can almost hear the echoes of centuries of trial and error that led to these small but vital insights. The knots themselves are small works of art, tight, symmetrical, and perfectly placed. The elder inspects each one, occasionally giving a subtle nod or, if it's not up to his standard, undoing the knot with quick, practiced fingers. There's no frustration here, just a quiet insistence on perfection. After all, these lashings must withstand salt water, storms, and time. Historians debate whether the patterns of lashings, often crisscrossed in beautiful geometric shapes, were purely functional, or if they carried symbolic meaning. Watching the builders now, it seems like both. The cords weave strength and beauty together, like a handshake between utility and art. The sun dips lower, casting a golden glow over the canoe. The lashings glisten with a thin sheen of oil, and the entire vessel now looks like a single, seamless piece of craftsmanship, even though it's held together by hundreds of separate fibers. You find yourself marveling at how something so soft can create such unshakable strength when properly applied. One of the apprentices pauses, holding up a finished section of lashings for the elder to inspect. The elder squints, runs a finger along the knots, and finally says, "Good. This will hold even when the sea is angry." You can almost hear the ocean snort in the distance, as if it's already planning a test. The work continues, and you notice how the builder's hands are rough, with small calluses and cuts, yet they handle the fibers as gently as if they were braiding hair. It's a fascinating balance, strength and delicacy intertwined, just like the cords themselves. As the last lashings are secured, the builders step back, stretching their arms and rolling their shoulders. The canoe is now a masterpiece of tension and balance, every joint tightly bound, every knot in its rightful place. You can feel the pride radiating from the group, like the warm glow of the setting sun. A soft breeze rustles through the palm trees, carrying the faint scent of coconut oil and salt water. The canoe rests on the sand, perfectly assembled, as though it's been waiting all its life for this moment. You let out a slow breath, realizing that even something as small as a knot can hold centuries of history and knowledge within it. As twilight approaches, the builders gather in a circle near the canoe, their faces illuminated by the warm glow of oil lamps. The hum of their voices softens into silence as the village priest steps forward, holding a small bowl filled with sea water and fragrant herbs. This is the moment of blessing, a ritual as important as any tool or technique used in the construction. The priest, a wiry man with eyes as sharp as coral edges, begins chanting in a low, melodic voice. The words roll like gentle waves, rising and falling with a rhythm that feels older than the island itself. Historians still argue whether these blessings were meant solely for spiritual protection or if they also served as a way to unite the community before a voyage. Watching the scene, you suspect it's both a moment where faith and craft blend seamlessly. One by one, the builders close their eyes, their heads bowed slightly. The priest dips a frond of leaves into the seawater, sprinkling droplets over the hull. Each drop sparkles in the fading light, sliding down the painted wood like tiny stars. You can almost feel the canoe sigh, as though it knows it's being welcomed into the world. A quirky detail emerges when a small child toddles up, holding a seashell, as if offering it to the priest. The priest smiles, accepts the shell, and places it gently inside the canoe. "For safe journeys," he says, his voice soft, yet full of conviction. The builders chuckle quietly, but you notice their eyes gleam with pride. Even the youngest villagers are part of this legacy. The priest continues chanting, moving slowly around the canoe. His hands hover over the figurehead, tracing its serene features as if sealing an invisible promise. The figurehead, freshly carved and polished, glows faintly under the lamp's light. You find yourself staring at its calm face, imagining it watching the horizon with eternal patience. The builders join the chant, their voices blending into a deep, resonant harmony. It's not loud, but it's powerful, like the steady heartbeat of the sea. You feel your own breathing slow, your mind settling into the quiet strength of the moment. This isn't just a blessing for the canoe. It's a reminder of the bonds between people, ocean, and the spirits they believe in. Historians debate the exact meaning of some of the chants, as many of the original words have been lost or changed over centuries. Some believe they invoke the ancestors, while others think they are simple wishes for good weather and safe sailing. As you listen, it doesn't really matter what the words mean. What matters is how they feel warm, steady, and reassuring. The ritual ends with a quiet moment of reflection. The priest places his hand on the hull, whispering a final blessing that sounds like a farewell and a greeting all at once. The builders follow suit, each touching the canoe with reverence. Even the apprentices, usually full of restless energy, are solemn, their faces lit by the flickering glow of the lamps. A final quirky touch seals the ceremony. One of the women brings out a small bowl of coconut milk and pours a thin line along the base of the canoe. "For luck," she says, smiling softly. The liquid glistens briefly before soaking into the sand, as if feeding the earth that gave the tree. The night air is calm now, filled only with the faint rustle of palm fronds and the distant murmur of waves. The builders sit quietly for a moment, looking at the canoe as though they've just completed a sacred sculpture. You feel the weight of the day settle into your bones, but it's a comfortable kind of tiredness, the kind you get after watching something meaningful unfold. You glance up at the stars beginning to prick the darkening sky. They seem brighter here, sharper, as if they're leaning in to watch the ceremony. The canoe, with its figurehead and colorful patterns, looks ready to meet those stars, to ride beneath their light and trust their guidance across the open sea. The next evening, as the sky shifts from soft lavender to a deeper blue, the village gathers by the beach for the launch. The builders have worked quietly all day, making final adjustments, tightening lashings, checking the seams of resin, and brushing away the last traces of dust from the hull. You stand to one side, feeling the energy in the air grow, a mix of pride and anticipation. The canoe rests on a bed of smooth logs, ready to be rolled into the tide. Its figurehead seems almost alive in the dim light, watching the horizon like it already knows where it's headed. Children chase each other along the shoreline, their laughter blending with the rhythmic wash of waves. The apprentices, though trying to appear serious, can't hide the smiles tugging at their faces. The builders form a semicircle around the canoe, each holding a piece of woven rope. They will use these ropes to guide the vessel into the water. One man runs his hand along the freshly painted surface, tracing the patterns of triangles and spirals as though reading a familiar story. Historians still argue whether these designs were unique signatures of each builder or if they carried messages meant for the spirits of the sea. Tonight, it feels like both. As the tide rolls in, the elder gives a short, firm nod. That's the signal. The builders bend down, slipping their hands beneath the hull, and with a unified breath, they lift. The canoe rises slowly, almost reverently, like they're carrying something sacred rather than just a boat. The weight presses into their shoulders, but no one complains. It's a moment too important for anything but focus. The crowd falls silent, save for the whisper of waves. You can hear the crunch of sand under bare feet as the builders begin to walk, step by careful step, toward the water's edge. A quirky detail unfolds when one of the children runs ahead, splashing into the shallows and waving his arms like he's leading a parade. The elder chuckles but doesn't stop him. The sea likes joy, he mutters, and everyone smiles. The logs beneath the canoe are moved one by one, rolling the hull forward with a deep, earthy creak. It's a simple technique, yet so effective that it feels like watching an ancient magic trick. How do they move something so heavy with such calm ease? The answer is teamwork, timing, and more than a little patience. When the canoe's bow touches the first ripple of seawater, a collective breath is released, almost like a sigh of relief. The tide swirls around the figurehead, glinting under the fading light, and you get the sense that the ocean itself is welcoming this new vessel. The builders pause at knee-deep water, letting the canoe rest for a moment. The elder steps forward, placing both hands on the bow. He whispers something you can't hear, a final blessing perhaps, or a quiet conversation with the sea. Then he gives a slight push, and the canoe slides forward, floating free for the first time. There's a small cheer from the apprentices, quickly hushed by a grin from the elder. "Let her feel the water," he says softly. You watch as the canoe rocks gently, its painted sides gleaming under the reflection of the first stars appearing overhead. It's beautiful in a way that feels timeless, like this moment could have happened 100 years ago or 1,000. A quirky tradition follows. Someone tosses a single flower into the canoe, a hibiscus bloom so bright red it almost glows against the wood. "For luck," they say, and the canoe drifts with the tide, the flower nodding along as if approving. Historians debate whether such rituals were symbolic gestures or practical ways to test how a canoe floated under light weight. Watching the scene, you're convinced it's a bit of both, part superstition, part craftsmanship, all wrapped in the quiet awe of seeing a vessel take its first breath on the water. As darkness settles, the villagers light torches along the beach, their flickering flames casting golden streaks across the tide. The canoe sways in the shallows, tethered to the shore with a simple rope. The builders stand back, shoulders relaxed now, as if they've handed over a piece of themselves to the ocean. The soundscape is soft and mesmerizing, the gentle splash of water against the hull, the distant murmur of voices, and the low hum of wind moving through the palms. You feel your own breathing sync with these sounds, slower and deeper, as if your body knows it's time to rest. The elder sits down on the sand, his feet buried in the cool grains. He gestures for the apprentices to join him, and soon they're all seated, looking out at the canoe like it's a child they've just sent into the world. "She's ready," he says, his voice almost a whisper. And you believe him. Night fully descends, and the stars unfurl across the sky like a million scattered pearls. The air cools, carrying the faint tang of salt and resin, while the tide hums a gentle lullaby. You find yourself seated at the water's edge, toes buried in the damp sand, watching the canoe bob softly in the moonlight. It rocks like a cradle, as if it already knows how to soothe the sea. The builders remain close, their silhouettes etched against the torchlight. They speak in quiet tones, voices blending with the rhythmic splash of the waves. Every so often someone chuckles softly, pointing at the way the canoe dances with the current. It's a moment of contentment, like finishing a long puzzle and knowing every piece is exactly where it should be. The apprentices are quieter now, their earlier excitement replaced by a reflective stillness. One of them traces a finger along the sand, sketching stars and waves, while another simply leans back, staring up at the sky. Historians still argue how Polynesians navigated thousands of miles with such precision, guided only by stars, wind, and ocean swells. Watching these people now, you can see that navigation isn't just a skill, it's a relationship with the elements, a trust in the world's silent language. The elder sits near you, cross-legged, a faint smile on his weathered face. He doesn't look at the canoe but at the horizon, where the dark line of sea meets the star-dotted heavens. "The stars tell you when to sleep," he says softly, almost as if speaking to himself. They tell you when to wake, when to sail, and when to stay. His words sink into the stillness like pebbles dropping into a pond. A quirky moment interrupts the solemnity when one apprentice, clearly fighting sleep, topples sideways in the sand. The group laughs quietly, their laughter warm and unhurried, like waves brushing the shore. You feel your own eyelids grow heavy, as though the day's rhythm of sanding, carving, and painting has seeped into your bones. The canoe, now fully alive with color, curves, and spirit, rests as if breathing. The figurehead faces the open sea, its carved eyes catching the starlight. You imagine it whispering to the stars, promising safe journeys and gentle winds. The red hibiscus flower still rests inside, its petals glowing faintly in the torchlight like a tiny ember of luck. The villagers start to leave in small groups, their shadows melting into the palms. Only a few remain, sitting quietly, their presence more like guardians than workers. Someone hums an old Tunia melody that sounds like the sea sighing in the dark. You can almost feel it wrap around you, carrying away the last remnants of your restless thoughts. Historians debate whether such launches were always accompanied by ritual feasts or celebrations. Here, it's clear that the real celebration is in the silence, in the simple satisfaction of a job well done. There's no need for speeches or grand gestures. The canoe itself, sturdy and graceful, is the story they wanted to tell. The ocean stretches out like an endless canvas, silvered by moonlight. The stars above are bright and sharp, and you find yourself counting them without realizing, your breath slowing as you match their quiet glow. The canoe rocks gently, creating ripples that catch the light, each ripple drifting out until it becomes part of the night sea's soft rhythm. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the sounds wash over you, the faint creak of wood, the whisper of palms, the murmured voices of those who linger. It's as though the world has shrunk to this beach, this canoe, and the quiet heartbeat of the ocean. The beach is nearly empty now, and the torches have burned low, their flames small and steady. The night air is cool and soft, brushing against your skin like silk. You can hear only the quiet sigh of the sea, waves rolling in, with a sound as gentle as slow breathing. The canoe rests on the tide, rocking lightly, its painted hull reflecting streaks of moonlight that shimmer like silver threads. You take one last look at the figurehead. Its calm, watchful face seems almost alive under the stars, guarding the boat and all who will travel in it. A faint breeze stirs, carrying the mixed scents of resin, salt, and coconuta soothing perfume of a day well spent. The builders have gone, their laughter and stories fading into the night. Only the ocean remains, endless and patient. Its rhythm is steady and comforting, like the pulse of the earth itself. You let that rhythm sink into you, feeling your own breath slow and deepen. Your body feels heavy in the sand, every muscle unwinding. The day's colors red paint, golden sunlight, the dark shimmer of polished wood fade into soft shadows. The canoe drifts a little, its ropes creaking gently, a sound so tender it feels like a lullaby. As you gaze at the stars, your thoughts drift further away, melting into the vastness of the sky. You let the sound of the waves rock you, as if you too are floating on the ocean in that quiet canoe. The night grows still, and your eyelids grow heavy. The journey is complete, and all that's left is rest.